I want to link this again to the issue of breaking the dynasties of poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, we are creating two sets of Nigerians today. Those who are having a virtuous circle, those who have are having more. Those who don't have are trapped. And I want to link this about breaking this, that when I was growing up, the children of the rich and the poor, and I'm sure it's the same for most of you, attended the same schools, taught by the same teachers. So if the children of the poor were brilliant enough, they had a chance of climbing out of the loop. Is that what happened? Today, the children of the middle and upper class are in elite private schools in Nigeria and abroad. The children of the poor are condemned in the very low level, poorly funded, poorly resourced public schools where they receive very little learning going on. What happens is that the children of the poor, therefore, end up with little or no education. They end up on the wrong side of society, and therefore their own children end up in the same process, and poverty has therefore become a dynasty. The parents are poor, and their children in all likelihood end up being poor. For you to break out of this, and you add to that the population explosion, especially in the frontline states. You add the fact that agriculture will not be a means of livelihood sustainably in the longer term. As the economy modernizes, you'll be having commercial farming, and people will move out of agriculture. So, if you want an inclusive development, we must begin to think about how we break out these dynasties of poverty through qualitative but accessible education and health. If the poor doesn't have that, if it doesn't have the skills, and therefore to have the capacity to be able to participate in the production process, it will not be able to share in the result of the output. You will continue to have the gap widening and widening and widening. So the issue of inclusiveness is not going to happen, because you're not just going to employ somebody for the sake of employing somebody. You employ somebody because he can add value to what you are doing. To break the dynasties of poverty, I believe, is a very critical agenda for the APCs, and then we need to hear how this can be done going ahead. I don't also know, in the frontline states and much of Nigeria, what APC will do in terms of what I call a very sensitive topic, but I don't see how we can think of 2050 without addressing it. Population moderation. I didn't say population control. And I believe the people like our governor here, my brother, El-Rufai and co, you will have to lead this charge. The idea that a poor guy who has nothing, though in no means of livelihood, can, you say it's okay, can have 30 or 40 children with nothing to offer them. And the state doesn't have the resources to give those people the capacity to participate. You are building an army and a time bomb that might consume everyone sooner or later. Again, there is the last point I make here is the broken trust between the government and the people in terms of taxation and services. The people don't want to pay taxes because they don't believe that the government will offer them, and so on. But let's quickly move on. Economy and the opportunity. It is said that necessity is the mother of invention. And I want to talk about, I've talked about the gloomy parts of this. But it's important to provide that context, because we're not going to talk about how you move sustainably without dealing with these other ones. This is an opportunity now to actualize the 54-year-old aspiration of Nigeria since the 1962 development plan for diversified and sustainable economy. It's an opportunity for us to escape the oil and rentier consumption economy towards production. And I want to say that we have huge opportunities to do that, huge growth reserves. We have abundant cheap labor. I'm talking about those with skills, those with some education, abundant, very cheap, huge, in dollar terms, that is. You have huge reserves of natural oil, gas, and solid minerals, and fallow arable land to be farmed. You have extensive coastal land, high population density for globally competitive manufacturing. You have diaspora resources, a more diversified market economy with some shock absorbers. A word on this. And this is part of the disappointment many people felt about the way macroeconomic policy has been conducted over some months. Because instead of building on the market economy framework that has taken decades to build, we tended to see as if we can tinker and modify in a way, a trial and error process that has actually cost us more than move anything forward. We have cheap international finance, as I said, and huge elbow room to increase taxable revenue. Currently, it's about 5% of GDP. If you check around Africa, it's hovering between 18% to 25% as percent of GDP. So there is quite room to maneuver in that sense. And let me remind us that we have gone through this road before. If you check the Shagari era, '81 through the first Buhari of '84, '85, we've been through this kind of thing before. And success in change depends on whether you think it is temporary or it is a permanent shock. And let me say what I see as I will want to put this up front before I go into the way forward. The fundamental threat is democracy. You have short-term electoral cycles. Politicians, elected officials are under pressure to deliver quick short-term benefits today with an eye on the next election. Compare this to the painful long-term adjustments that might be required. For example, if some states you would rather owe workers than trying to think about rationalizing the public sector. It's not politically popular. It might cost you some votes the next time, and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of adjustments and the kind of costs that I talk about. In other words, there seems to be a potential conflict between what the people want today and what they need, the country needs to survive sustainably tomorrow. And how you deal with that is, I think I leave it up to you. But ladies and gentlemen, let me now get to what I might call the meat of my presentation, and which is what I call towards a progressive response. What should APC as a party, APC as a government do? And I say, first, you have response one. That first phase, in my view, was characterized by an assumption that the shock is temporary, and therefore a coping strategy. And literally, it's like we are waiting for the next oil price to rebound. And the policy framework so far, as we have seen, is more of the same, plus some short-term demand management, tinker here and there. But I want to remind us that we have done this now for about 335 days, or 330 days, working days. If you calculate the days Monday to Friday, we have, by the end of this month, it would have been 330 days. And that will be about 35% of the total working days left for this particular government to end.